and know about what their experience has been, formulate like going forward certain aspects of what their observation has been about GDI, about the sector, and ultimately I'm sure you'll be able to relate to their experiences as well. So just introducing the panelists, we have Sudarshan, who has more than 9 years of experience in the consulting sector, and he's worked with DCG, did his MBA from XLRI, and was working with Clinton Health Access Initiative. We have Sunny, who worked with the Andhra government, worked with Samagra, and has 6 years of experience in the sector. And we have Sunaina, who worked as a CMGGA fellow and worked with Center of Civil Society, and ultimately was one of the earliest people to join GDI. So please, let's have a round of applause for all our panelists. Right. All three of you have joined GDI at different points of time, but there have been some things that have changed for the better and some not. And like the organization has really grown, the projects have grown. So what is one thing that you've seen that has changed in the one thing that has remained the constant?
So I think in terms of what has remained same, like what I have observed in like most sessions is that there were certain like operations kind of improvement that happened. But luckily, I think most of those happened before I joined. So it's like I have not seen the kind of when it was slightly kind of disorganized or something like that. So from the time I came in, everything has been smooth, but I can see certain as in process improvements taking place so that, and but frankly I don't like feel that change that much because I kind of anticipated it. Like when you are a young organization, and I like worked in past with one organization which had like 2 lakh employees, so I can never compare as in the processes that they have and the processes. So I was kind of prepared, but I am seeing a constant kind of improvement in the processes, and it is becoming like more streamlined, and you know like where to find things and everything. So that has kind of, it's a continuous kind of evolving process. And in terms of same, I think the kind of the vision of the company in terms of like the kind of work it does, I think many times it's possible like in a consulting kind of setup, because like there is no clear demarcation on what kind of work you want to do, and there are like all sort of work being done in the name of say impact or like even ESG and everything. So I think till now I have seen that the focus from a vision perspective is there, that like what kind of work you want to do, and yeah, I hope it remains the same.
You were there in the last Miracle. So what has changed since then, and what has remained the constant?
Is the ambition. I think GDI was just as ambitious when we started, and even today we are just as ambitious. What has changed? I think internal organization in terms of structure, the team, the way the team is placed. It's a lot clearer than it was initially, which is an obvious part of its growth and the trajectory.
So Sunny, the same question to you.
For 4 months now. So what changed would rather be a wrong question to answer. But to be honest, I really like the fact that in the span of 4 months, I've actually joined 2 of offsites, Kefi and Meraki. My expectation when I joined GDI in terms of the organization's vision has slightly been different. But once I joined GDI over the last 4 months, I think the organization has largely, I've actually been inspired by how the organization has been able to position itself in terms of its vision. Typically, when we say governance consulting, people have a restricted view that we'll work only with the governments and all, right? I think that was the first shift for me mentally. I sort of realized that working with the private sector also is a better strategy. And also the other thing that that I really liked is the vision of expanding our work to the other continents as well, the other continent, which is Africa as well. I think that also unlocks immense potential both for the org and for me also mentally when it comes to thinking of what and how I can contribute to the organization. I think that's been the mental shift that I have had over the last 4 months.
It was relatively shorter duration. But what has been your highlight in the organization in terms of that one moment where you felt that, okay, I'm in the right place, or like something that you did really felt that, now you're creating the sort of impact that you wanted to. So what would that one moment or initiative be?
Again, 4 months is a very short time to actually sort of pick up highlights of the work I have done. So I would
Right.
say I really have not thought about my work in that lens. But
Right.
when it comes to the org, the highlights largely have been in the sense of this extreme. There's a high focus on people and the growth of the people within the organization. I think that has been a highlight that I have observed for myself rather than me contributing something to the project or the org. So the extreme focus on people and also extreme focus on trying new things and probably failing also and succeeding mostly. So that has been my greatest highlight for the last 4 months.
Yeah. So even at organization level activities or even an informal thing which you would consider as a highlight within the last year at GDI.
Like picking up highlight is slightly difficult because like I've been here 6 months and I am part of kind of one project from the beginning. So that may become slightly difficult, but I would say that like what I have seen across consulting organizations is that since you are in kind of a knowledge economy kind of thing, so focus on people is really important, and I think that focus is here as well. So that would be like a highlight for me because it's like in all consulting firms, like people, you have to focus on people because those are the guys who are like doing the work and everything. But yeah, like I can't think of like something that kind of
One
highlight.
specific highlight. Right. So Sunaina, in terms of your work, was there any initiative which you felt that, like, you've implemented something really great which you took initiative for, or any other moment that you would want to share?
I don't know about a moment, but just the fact that I got to explore a lot of new ideas, new things at GD, and I was always encouraged to do that. Whether it's innovative financing or I remember once having a conversation with Ankur about energy in general, climate and energy, and now we are working on something around that. I think just the fact that you get to explore a lot of new things, ideas, I think that in general.
So, another question to you is that, like, what has been the contribution of GDI? Like, how do you see the contribution of GDI from for professional development since the last year, and how has it changed after the last Merathi, where it was, I think, discussed more in depth that professional development framework has to be there? So, what would the contribution of that be within the last year? How has GDI contributed?
Specifically the professional development framework?
No,
or
no,
in
no.
general
Just in general, professional development.
I think I've grown a lot as a professional, mainly in two major things. Firstly, I think stakeholder management, coordination, interaction in general, I feel like I've personally observed has improved a lot. I feel a lot more confident when I'm presenting. I'm a lot more clearer in my thought. I'm able to sense what it is that somebody expects me to do. What is the audience expecting basically. So I think that is one thing that has changed. Secondly, I think I've gotten better at structuring a very unstructured thing. I remember when I came and I used to struggle. That is something I used to struggle with. Like, if you're giving a very vague statement, I would struggle a lot with that. But I think that is something that is improved. There's a scope for a lot more improvement, but comparatively, I think it is improved a lot.
Right. So, Sudarshan, how do you see your professional development over the last 5-6 months, and how can also GDI sort of do that better for a medium level professional or someone who's had a particular has had work experience in the past?
Yeah. So I think from my personal perspective, one thing is that I had never worked with like so closely with the government bureaucracy. So that has been a kind of new experience, and like so that is something I'm still learning to because it works at a certain pace. It has its own systems and everything. As of hiring, I think middle level managers or something like that. I think that's a problem of the sector itself, and I frankly feel that it's a very difficult problem to solve. Like in computer science, they used to treat say some problems are NP hard, where you can't like solve them, something like that. And the reason being is the way I have seen social sector involved, it has certain perceptions. So people who already have done MBA or something like that, and who have worked for 5-8 years, and if they don't have aspiration to go to a, say, Ivy League or even like a British kind of institution or wherever, like most of them don't see a reason. It's like कि भाई सोशल इम्पैक्ट में अगर बाहर नहीं जाना है पढ़ने, सीवी पे नहीं चाहिए, तो why I go into social impact? And I think that is a very kind of big mental block. Like nobody sees social impact as something that I'll go there and become a partner in 10 years or something. So it's not a, I think the perception is not wrong. Like you can, like, there is a book by Ayn Rand. She says that it's quite difficult to acquire fame. It's impossible to change its nature once you have acquired it. So I think social sector is facing that they have acquired a fame. It's very difficult. Like if you see all the fellowship, 2 year, 1 year, 2 years. So what gets into people's head is that basically they are saying, okay, come work for us at, say, compromised kind of salary, and in turn you get a point on the CV. So when you pitch something that way, so people who don't have that kind of aspiration of going abroad or something, they see that why should I join like, and I am talking about, I have worked in some of the social health, like Clinton you talked about, they pay very well. Like they will match your compensation wherever you are coming from and everything. And even for them, I have seen, like in my peer group and other similar kind of peer group, people who don't have a ambition to follow further studies or something like that, they don't see a point in working there. And I think that is the biggest challenge, and I don't have an answer to how to overcome that. But I think in the past, the sector itself has kind of presented itself is कि ठीक है कम पैसा दे रहे हैं तो क्या हुआ, CV पॉइंट मिल रहा है ना, 2 साल काम कर लो. And when you build that kind of thing, if you talk about like for profit consulting firm, they never pitch it like that. So when you pitch it like that, you will like acquire a certain kind of talent, and I think that's a problem. I don't know how it will get solved, but I think that's my thing.
Like, okay, the social sector is providing you the opportunities to develop yourself. So are there also ways that we can look to ensure that for a relatively senior level professional?
I think, see, what I have seen is that gradually people are open to kind of experimenting in the sector. So one thing is that gradually so word of mouth is really important. So you have, like, say, today maybe GDI or similar kind of organizations are running, say, 5-7 projects or 10 projects. Like in the future when they are running 50 or something, and eventually there would be people who have a strong interest and they will come join. And I think once that you build that pipeline of, say, 50 odd people who have good experience or something like that, then I think people will start coming in. But I think that will take time. Like there is no as such short term fix I can see of.
So that is what work at the district level. Then when you were working in Mission Bunyad, you worked at the state level. And now you're working with Niti Aayog, which is a national level organization. And it's been in how has the outlook shifted as you go from the district level to the state level to the national level? And how did your learnings contribute to, ultimately contribute to you being more effective in the current project?
I think the speed at which work happens keeps decreasing as you go from district to central. I mean, a DM in a district is much more agile than the way you do at the Niti Aayog, for example. I think that's also because there's more layers of bureaucracy that get added to it. I think biggest learning on how to navigate is I think good stakeholder management, clear messaging, clearly articulating what you want out of a particular person, and third is to just keep at it, keep pursuing.
Great. And are there specific learnings for other people at GDI who are currently working at the state level project but would be coming to, say, working with organizations that function at the international level or work at the national level? So how to deal with that?
I mean, everybody does it a little differently. The way I would articulate the same thing would be very different than what, for example, Sunny would do. But I think everybody navigates and finds it.
Right. So, Sunny, my next question being to you. So, you worked with Samagra and you've been in the sector for 7 years. So, how do you see like us evolving as a relatively young social sector organization, and how do you see our growth from now on? And based on your experience of having worked in the sector.
So my so within the sector, within the governance space rather, largely I got to work in multiple organizations, 4 organizations at least, where one was directly with the government, one was in a similar space, one with a think tank slash implementation partner kind of a role, and then again GDA. Right? So if I have to just compare the kind of work or the roadmap the other organizations have. If you work directly with the government, there's very little scope for upward mobility. You probably remain a consultant, and then maybe you stay there for a very, very long time. Your designation might not change, but your compensation might go ahead based on your relationship with the bureaucrat fundamentally. In the think tank kind of a setup, I think that's a different ballgame altogether. But within the impact space, impact consulting space, I think, like I said, the fundamental difference between the fundamental difference in terms of what I observed in the other firms and what I do here is in terms of focusing on the people again. I resonate to what Ankur mentioned many times in the past also, that since we are in the knowledge economy, I think our emphasis along with impact also has to be much more on how do we impact the lives of the people within the organization. So in terms of figuring out their career trajectory, giving them space to do what they want within the org. I think most of people who took some interest in any aspect of what they wanted to do, they picked it up, and then the organization largely built upon it, right? So I think that strategy is a much more sustainable strategy in the long term, rather than just focusing on, let us say, hardly defined professional development in some sense.
Right.
So, to be honest, I think GDI. I mean, I'm not judging GDI here, saying GDI is doing better and all, but that is an approach that I really resonated with, and I mean, continuing to focus on the people within the org will sort of help open up more sectors for GDI, open more geographies for GDI, like we already have worked in Kenya and all. I think if we continue this approach, I think we should be able to increase our projects, increase our learning, increase our knowledge. Everything sort of multiplies manifold, and we should quickly be 2-3 times as an org to what we are right now. That's GDI's. At least that is what I see GDI's growth as.
Right. So my next question is to Sudarshan. So basically, you're someone who transitioned from the corporate consulting space to the social impact space. So how do you see, like now having worked here for a while as well, what would be the pros and cons for the professionals who are entering into the social sector space as opposed to the corporate consulting?
Yeah, so I think if I say the positives, and again it is limited to my experience to the firms I have worked with. The positive side I have seen is that you have a very kind of wide latitude to in terms of client engagement and everything. So even in like corporate side consulting, even though you might be say interacting with supply chain head or something, the kind of the parameters within which you have to engage is pretty much kind of fixed, and you don't deviate from that. I think here there is like you can build your own relationship and right up to the highest level of the client as well, and you can kind of it's pretty malleable that way, that how you want to shape that. So I think someone who is more so in the initial stages of career, it's a very great skill to have, because you will find people who have worked for like really 10-15 years and they also kind of not very comfortable interacting with client or something. So I'm pretty sure that someone who is working with GDI even for say 2 years won't face that, because like you are pretty much like that is very a skill. You can say that it's like throwing someone in the water and learn to swim kind of, but that has its own. So I think that is a great thing uh, on the work side of it. The negative on the work side I can say is that uh, one thing I think the structure in which, like, since most of these engagements are like tripartite, where government is the beneficiary but they are not paying for it, so I think it shows also in their behavior sometimes. So it's like, you don't look a free horse in the mouth kind of thing कि free में मिल रहा है ले लो service kind of, but you are not. I will give you an example. So I was working for a for-profit consulting firm, and there, so like here we have these meetings with SPD. There we have something every 2 months or something. We call it SCM, Steering Committee Meeting, where the CEO of the client will come. So once what happened that the meeting was supposed to take place at 11 a.m. and at 9, the CEO came to know that one of their board, basically their board chairman is in the same city. So he went to meet them, got delayed, he dropped the apology mail, and then that SCM never happened. It was scheduled to 2 months later. Why? Because his idea is कि this consulting firm partners are also there, and I can't ask them कि कल का आप time दे दो, because they are also partners. But here what my experience has been कि you will go for a meeting, it will happen 5 years, it will begin like 5 hours later. It might not happen. People don't know. So I think that kind of thing, I think no matter, like, and I'm talking particularly these are CEOs of firms which have like 15,000 crores in revenue, and they get paid like $5 million annually. And if they skip a meeting, you will receive an apology mail, and they can't say कि ठीक है 2 घंटा लेट हो गया, 2 घंटे बाद कर लो मीटिंग. It would be like अब तो reschedule करना पड़ेगा, because I can't ask someone if I got delayed. So I think that is a very fundamental difference, because I think, as I said, the nature of it is such that कि the government is not paying for it, or maybe that's how it works or something. So that is a very different kind of thing. And I think at operations level, of course, like you can't compare, because like these are different set of organizations, and they are like in for-profit and more so in top consulting firms. Like I don't know like how billing works here, but I know there like the billing rates are insane. So that's why it reflects on the flexibility that employees have and everything as well. Uh, but again, on the positive side of it, I think if you compare it to like the consulting ka work experience, I think you are doing almost the same kind of work, and you can have like better work-life balance here if you manage your work. Like again, it can depend on project to project, but I can tell you that at most of the for-profit consulting firm, the top ones, like in summers you won't see the sun setting. Like people don't leave office before 9 or something like that. So that kind of thing is also there. So it's a very kind of both kind of thing is there. But I think one of the fundamental difference which can be very frustrating for someone who comes from that kind of setup is that basically maybe bureaucracy have that mindset, but you don't feel like you are at the equal footing. It feels like that you are there to serve them. And again, I don't know how to solve for it.
Gendered lens, you're a young woman professional who's working in the development sector. So how have you found your journey at GDI? And like, what are the initiatives that we can take to make GDI an even better place, so we can, incentivize more young women professionals to join GDI and, also work on projects and lead to organizations. So, seeing things from a gendered lens, how has your journey as a young woman been at GDI?
Journey has been good. I mean, we have grown a lot in the organization, we've learned a lot. Some things we can do better, and I think I've put it up on posters also. I think we often do not consider the point of safety or convenience. Like consciously don't think of it. I know the intention is not think of it, but consciously probably giving people enough buffer, because I think most girls here would have done it. Share location. I know when I've been traveling in UP, I remember one time I shared my location with Maman and he was tracking me for 2 hours. So I think those kinds of things at an organizational level don't really come up, or it's not discussed as much as it should. So there should be some mechanism where you have some basic protocols. I know if I'm like struggling with something, I know who to call, I know what to do, I know where to raise it, or there's somebody who knows that this is what the itinerary is. So I think those kinds of things would be good to have.
Like having more processes in place.
I mean, some protocol, some SOS kind of a structure. I know, okay, this is one thing that
And a
happens.
safety one. Right. So Sunny, you're also an avid marathon runner. You also went at 5 o'clock today. So how do you sort of like when you're working on a very intensive project, the government needs it, but there's a work-life balance and a well-being aspect attached to it. So because you've worked for so long, you worked across projects that would be very intensive. So how do you maintain that? And like it's also like very important from you to young professionals like me to how to maintain that well-being and the balance and still work effectively on projects.
First of all, that statement is wrong. I am not an avid marathon runner. The last one I did was 1 year ago. But what I make it.
Okay, so the definition of avid varies.
Yeah.
From relatively.
Really.
Yeah.
No, but again, COVID has changed a lot of things generally. But I generally make sure I am active physically at some point of time during the day. I think answer has already been discussed yesterday. I think Ayushi already gave a very solid answer to it. She also has classes or whatever. I don't recall what classes exactly, but again, the way I also had to learn it the hard way only. But one approach that has always worked for me is if you read this book called Indistractable by Nir Eyal, who's a person who works on habits in general. So he has a strategy that is called time boxing. Right, 24 hours of a day, you sort of divide your time into segments. 8 hours for work, 8 hours for sleep. The remaining 8 hours, you again time box into different activities that you want to do, for example. So that's what I've been doing. My mornings have always been 6 to 9 hours for me only. I have rarely picked up work during the last many years actually, and except for travel to and from the client location. And again, even though I say that this is something I learned from a book. I think Ankur and I, when we had this conversation many years ago, also Ankur has always said that your hobbies or your activities that you want to do, you have to prioritize it at some point of your day. Right? The time boxing concept Ankur told me many years ago, but I really understood at that point of time until I read about it in a book also. But again, organization, I don't think no organization wants us to work 24 hours a day or maybe 18-19 hours a day and then lose on our well-being as well. Right? I don't think GDI also wants to do that. I think it's up to the individual to set up time for himself and then use the remaining time effectively so that both the work and the hobbies or activities, whatever they want to do, can be managed.
So now we go to the last section of which the organizing team has already signaled. So we go to the last section, which is basically a fun section, which is who's most likely to. So the ground rule is that you have to most likely to do that apart from 3 of you. So if that's a unanimous decision, you can decide for that person in the crowd. Otherwise, you have to point it towards each other. These are the arrows. And in terms of who's most likely to, which I'll ask the question for. So, but you can also unanimously decide, but then you'll have to give the reason for the same.